They must have gatekeepers letters from the various organizations that they want to study. All of those gatekeeper letters must accompany your application to be sure that what you are intending is researchable. Now, so a statistician is a type of person that renders high-end academic services to the student. Therefore, there must be a confidentiality agreement. Is that in operation here already? Or okay.
Make a note.
Yeah, make a note. I'll be talking to you about that. There has got to be a confidentiality agreement between the student and that particular service provider. And in the case of a statistician, it relates to the statistician guaranteeing the confidentiality of the information, agreeing to keep the information for a period of 5 years in case there are any queries. And this solves one of the big problems of universities, where they don't know what to do with the stuff. They haven't got systems in place to keep the questionnaires and the statistics. You get the service provider to provide that service and to sign off on that. And then there's another type of agreement. Yes?
Thanks, Klopper. I've got 2 questions.
Sure.
One is based on the theory you spoke about. Is there any difference between generalizing the theory and conceptualizing it?
Conceptualization has got a very special meaning in research, and I'll talk about the cognitive basis of research and theories. Now, conceptualization is part of the process at the beginning. And it's a very generic process. Then when you get to the middle phase where you have got all kinds of special information, there you see whether the statistics that you have, where they fit in that theory, how they contribute to the power of that particular theory. And if it fits, that means, and if your data was collected in the correct way, where a statistician has signed off on each phase of your research, at the end you can generalize it. You can state how, in general, your particular results contribute to the refinement or the greater predictive strength of the theory. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, partly you do. And another one is based on the submission of ethical clearance. Which
Yes.
one comes first? The intention to submit or the submission itself of the ethical clearance?
Okay, at some of the other universities...
Maybe at PhD and MBA level.
You mean at the 2 different ones?
Yes.
I'm not clued up on what the MBA procedures are here. I used to be the research coordinator at the GSB, and what I did in that case, part of the assignments of the MBA students in the research methods class was for them to prepare stuff, for me to evaluate the stuff, give them feedback, what needs to be done, and then go to gatekeepers' letters and tell them, this is the sample gatekeeper letters. You've got to come in the individual consultation session and explain to me what organization you're going to study. And give me an organogram of that organization. I want to see who the strategic decision makers are. And you've got to find out very specific information about the strategic decision makers, because a gatekeeper letter has got to be sent, a request for access to the organization has got to be sent to a very specific person, a decision maker. Otherwise, your request becomes a rugby ball or a soccer ball that's been kicked around here and there and everywhere. So one has got to be, when I was at the GSB, I was very specific, and it was one of their assignments. They were graded on it. And if they mucked about, they got a bad grade for that particular assignment. So in the end, when those students were ready to go and do the field work, everything had been done as a project, also their questionnaires, and adjusted to specifically what they wanted to do. And it was easy to, I as the research coordinator then said to the research office, here are the ethical clearance applications of the different students. And I waited for feedback from them, and based on the feedback, the adjustments that the students made, then the ethical clearance committee dealt with those things en masse. I don't know what the procedure is now.
It's still the same, but I wanted to check whether the intention to submit comes first or the ethical clearance comes first. Which one comes first? Because there is a package in ethical clearance, but the intention to submit can come at the beginning or after submitting the ethical clearance.
I do want to get some clarity on this term, intention to submit, because it is also used when a student gives a notice that they're going to hand in the thesis. Is this the one that you are talking about?
That's the one I'm talking about.
No, the ethical clearance is way earlier. Ethical clearance, the way I describe the process is during the research method lecture that I gave to them. And I had consultation sessions with each of them, reviewing what they had done, advising them on particular aspects where they had to make corrections. And that was done early, and they weren't permitted to do any research whatsoever until they had been given ethical clearance. Then they went and they wrote their dissertations, and those they did with under the consultation of supervisors. And I assume that's still the case. Yeah. Now, in this early process, I allocated supervisors early when I was involved in the process. And the supervisors were kept informed of the stage of each of their students. They weren't involved in the consultation sessions because some of the supervisors in those days were not local. They, one or two of them were in Joburg or wherever. But they were kept informed each stage of the way, and then they took over from me at a certain stage and started supervising the field work and the writing of the dissertation. Yeah. Is it still being done the same way? Okay. Am I clear? Or is there still?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Prof, if I may
Sure.
answer, we wouldn't permit someone to put in an intention if they didn't have it. That's my position.
Yeah.
Because if they're saying, I want to submit my thesis and haven't felt together and grading it,
Yeah.
it's just too.
You're setting that student up for failure, and the institution in the end for people who don't complete their research. And you must remember this whole question of MBA level research is very important, because if that person fails his research module, he forfeits his whole MBA. I was aware of the fact that a number of universities wanted to get rid of ethical clearance, of the research thesis module. But the Committee for Higher Education said no. There's no way in which you will claim that this is an MBA if it hasn't got a research component associated with it. Okay, now I've been talking to you about research philosophy amongst others. I am now going to say to you there is another way. But it is not a pathway for the faint-hearted. And that is to go and see how humans think. If you're going to be doing research on people's perspectives of certain social issues or financial issues, you can trust the rather woolly theories that philosophers generate, and then we are sitting with a problem in any case that in Western, basically American British type research, the research is based on what researchers in the English world are saying about things. They are not taking into account what even the French research philosophers are saying, let alone what African philosophers are saying. And if you are going to stick to theories, and there's the slightest bit of social orientation to what you're doing, you've got to look at what the French philosophers are saying, because their philosophy, going back to the Saussure's structuralism, and all of the post-structuralists and the modernists in the French philosophical tradition are very firmly grounded in the impact of major events and institutions on the lives of individuals. So I'm now talking about philosophers like Derrida and a number of the hermeneutics philosophers that tell you, if you're analyzing text, this is how you deconstruct the contents of a text. Now, the third way is when you look at human cognition, the principles of human cognition, and what human cognition tells us about reality around us. And this is the first slide that I want to show you here is, if you look at electromagnetism, it's a very wide spectrum. It starts with extra low frequency waves that are a few meters. If you look at the sine curve, they're a few meters long, and you typically get those things at these electrical pylons. They emanate extra low frequency waves that are extremely, their period is extremely wide. Then you get radio waves, television waves, microwaves used in our kitchen. Now, infrared rays. Humans are equipped to sense infrared. You stand in front of a fire, or you touch a pot that's hot, and you burn your finger. You know that you are able to sense infrared rays. Then you get to the visual spectrum. Now, the basic thing that I want to tell you is human vision and human sense of warmth and cold, it is so limited in comparison with the whole spectrum that we are aware of. And we're not even aware of the fact that this is the very bottom end or the very top end of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, if this is how narrow the visual spectrum for human beings are, and how narrow our sense of heat and cold is, can you see? Seeing can't be believing. Now, what do humans do? We design technology to help us, whatever is not human scale, to bring it onto human scale so that we can study and understand it. And IT is a very important part of those technologies. But there are a number of other technologies like ultrasound, for instance. If you go for ultrasound or for an fMRI scan, if there's, they're looking, a number of years ago my one son fell ill, very ill, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. And let's make the story short. About 100,000 rand later, because of a number of successive fMRI scans that my medical aid, of course, refused to pay for, they discovered that he had a form of meningitis that was here in his lower back. They picked up the point of that virus. Now, when my sons went to study in the Cape, I said to my colleagues here, I'm going with them. I want to see that they do what they're supposed to do and that they're living under the right conditions. Now, I tell you today, if I hadn't made that decision, that child would have been dead today. If he had been left to the mercy of hostile students and nurses that were available there. So, these technologies work. They're not cheap, but they save lives, and if they save lives, they're really worth it. So humans are unaware of most of electromagnetic radiation. The story is about Chernobyl and about solar flares, and by the way, if your DSTV has been severely disrupted for the past 10 days, it's solar flares. And if your internet has similarly suffered, it's the solar flares. We're in a period of solar flare high now, and it takes that little photon about 100,000 years to come from the center of the sun up to where it can radiate as light. But it is then released in such massive quantities that it causes a solar wind. And we survive that solar wind because the Earth is an electromagnetic generator. Right inside of planet Earth, there is a smaller version of Earth that is made of metal, and that is rotating at slightly different speeds, faster than the rest of planet Earth. And that generates an electromagnetic field that protects us not only against solar flares, but also from all kinds of rays that emanate from elsewhere in the cosmos. I wish I had time to give you a lecture just on the sort of technologies that humans are using to detect those rays and to detect earthquakes and stuff. It's fascinating. But the point is, humans are unaware of most electromagnetic radiation. We see colors, certain colors better than others. We're far better at seeing red and yellow, blue, green, but there are other sort of intermediate frequencies that we see poorly or we don't see at all. If you've got pets at home, your dog, for instance, can hear things that you can't hear. They can smell things. Your dog has got a three-dimensional sense of smell. They can sniff at a door, and they can have a three-dimensional perspective of what they are smelling where in that room. Now, the visual acuity of dogs, for instance, is faster than humans. They see things faster than we do. As a consequence, if your dog is looking at the TV, he's not seeing an image there, he's just seeing lights flickering on and off, that's all. I'm telling this to you to warn you. There are people who are advertising dark TV nowadays. Have you seen this? It's to get money out of the pockets of people who feel guilty because they're away from their pets all of the time. And they tell you that it's shifted into some of the color ranges that will attract the attention of dogs. And it's fuzzy images, but you can see dogs running in the field, you can see birds flying and stuff. But trust